GameSir, which is known for budget but still fairly high quality gaming accessories, mainly controllers, is back at it again with the X5s. And this is a $50 do-it-all wireless mobile gaming controller. And it's Bluetooth, so it works with iOS, Android, Switch, and PC. And it has some premium features like Hall effect sticks. So it's only $50, but goes well beyond just a single platform. And at that budget price, is it making any compromises, or is it a great do-it-all option? Well, let's dive in and check it out. Hey everybody, I'm Jordan with 9to5Mac. First off, let's just take a look at the design of this mobile controller. Now it has the kind of, the backbone kind of design. I think they were the first company that did it, where they have this solid piece in the back here that expands to fit different size devices in here. It obviously fits my iPhone 16 Pro just fine, and it can fit other devices going up to 213 millimeters or 8.39 inches. And with a controller installed in here, it gives it a fairly sturdy overall feel. You know, it's got some nice little grips on the sides that are swappable, and it doesn't feel like it's gonna fall out here or anything. It feels nice and secure with my iPhone connected. One other thing you might notice, this little blinking light down here, the cool thing about that is it can sense when you extend this arm, so it will automatically power on. So if you already have a device paired, it will automatically turn on and pair with that. So you're ready to go without having to push any extra buttons, which is kind of a cool feature. And continuing on with the design, the weight of the device itself is just 174 grams, and it is wireless. It has an internal battery. The battery capacity is 840 milliamp hours, but really, I wouldn't even guess that this is wireless just based on how lightweight it is. So if it's something you are packing along and taking with you and don't want to carry something that's super heavy, this is a great option because it's so light. Speaking of packing it up and taking it along with you, it does come with a carrying case, and you can see it's very simple, very lightweight, and opens up very easily here. There is a knockout or a hole here for a USB-C charging cord, so you can plug it in when you can charge it when it's in the case. And then it also has a little puller here, a little keycap puller, if you will. So you can actually pull the keycaps and change the orientation, which we'll talk about here in a second. And continuing with the design, everything is exactly where you would expect it to be. We have the left stick, which is further up here. We have the right stick, which is a little bit more pulled back. So it's more like that Xbox controller, not necessarily the PlayStation controller where these sticks are on the same level. Of course, we have the D-pad, we have the face buttons, we have bumpers and triggers, Hall effect triggers. And then we have your menu buttons, a home button, and kind of a little multi-purpose button down here where you can change different modes of the controller, which we'll check out more in a second here. And a couple last little things you have on here. There is a pairing button, a small pairing button over here. Kind of looks like the pairing button on like an Xbox controller. And then we have a USB-C port. So this is wireless, it uses Bluetooth, but you can also plug devices in via USB-C if you would rather do that. I also feel like this size of controller is also fairly common, but I do feel like for me, it's just a little bit on the small side. To hit some of the buttons, I really have to kind of contort my thumbs to really get them and activate them. It's not as comfortable as like a full-size Xbox controller for me. That being said, my kids love this size. They love this controller. It fits their hands a lot better. I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they both prefer this size compared to a larger Xbox style controller. They've also used the Switch Joy-Cons and they've used Xbox controllers, but this is kind of like a nice little in-between, a little sweet spot for them, I think. And now moving on to one of the best features for a $50 budget controller like this is GameSir has Hall effect sticks in here. So that really is kind of, it's a big marketing thing that a lot of companies have been doing recently, whereas basically there are less contact points that can wear down in the sticks, and usually that is what is attributed to stick drift in a lot of standard controllers. So the hope is here that with Hall effect sticks, they won't wear out as fast, and that's not something you'll need to worry about. Now, I've had this for probably a week, and I've been using it quite a bit, but this isn't a long-term review where I can really test the durability. That being said, I have used quite a few other GameSir controllers, and the durability has been really good for those. I still have the G7 SE that my kids used quite a bit, and you know, kids aren't super nice to controllers most of the time, but that one's been holding up really well for us. Definitely better than some of Xbox's own controllers like the Elite 2. So back to these sticks on the X5s, in use, they feel like an upgrade from the Joy-Cons, what you would find on a Switch, but they're still not quite as big and on par as like a full-size Xbox controller, once again, in my opinion. So that combination of, the smaller size and, a little bit smaller sticks and movement makes this controller kind of feel a little bit more like it's geared toward the casual player, not someone who's really looking for the pinnacle of performance. If I were, competitively playing like an FPS game on a mobile device and trying to use this controller, I would probably opt for something larger, one of GameSir's other controllers, for example. But just want to reiterate, this is a $50 wireless controller with Hall effect sticks, which is a pretty cool feature on here. All right, moving on, let's talk more about the buttons here, which once again, I would say lean more towards the casual player. And my main reason for saying that is once again because of the size, the ergonomics. I feel like my thumb is very close to both of these, B and Y when I am pushing these. And that was one issue that I sometimes ran into when I was playing like Asphalt. I would, be trying to hit the boost, but I would accidentally hit the drift button instead, or hit them both at the same time. Obviously, it wasn't a huge issue, and I do think it's something to get used to. It probably isn't an issue for most people, but that's something that for me, it makes us feel a little bit like a compromise, and for maybe more casual gamers because of that smaller size on here. One awesome feature though, and we alluded to it with the case, is that you can swap out these buttons and change the layout. You can swap the B and the A, you can swap the X and the Y, and there's also another button combination you can push, which physically swaps those inputs on here so it is all lined up how it's supposed to be. So that's a great feature in here. You're not just swapping the button mapping, you're actually swapping the physical buttons so they are all accurately laid out on here. So I think that's a huge bonus, a huge plus for this, multi-platform controller, which really makes it compatible with different devices. All right, moving on, we'll talk about the triggers. Of course, they are linear in here, so you can progressively pull them. It feels like a much shorter pull than what you would find on like an Xbox controller, but you can also turn it into a hair trigger if you want by pushing a combination of buttons. So if you are playing a game where you don't need any sort of linear pull in here, you just want it to activate instantly, you can push a couple buttons and that is how this will work. And the bumpers actually feel quite good. They've got a nice little tactile feel and click when you push them. They're easy to find, easy to actuate. I really don't have any complaints about the bumpers. I do have some complaints about the D-pad though. Once again, this kind of feels like the budget compromise here. It is very mushy. There is not much feedback to anything going on here. It's hard to tell, what you're pushing or what direction you're pushing it. So once again, I feel like more geared toward the casual player rather than the competitive. If you're playing a game where you are using the D-pad quite heavily, this might be even one reason you want to look for something else. For most of the games that I'm playing, that's not something I have to worry about, so it's not a huge deal breaker for me. So to make it work on all these different platforms and these different modes, there are some different button combinations you can push to swap different modes. And here's some of the things you can change. You can toggle the dead zone, activate a turbo button, adjust the vibration, toggle the hair trigger, switch the button layouts, and adjust the volume. And I've had to keep the manual handy nearby me just so I can remember what everything is and what buttons to push in here. I would have liked if they would have kept a little cheat sheet or something that you could keep in the case, because I feel like I'll need to reference that manual quite a bit, and if I end up losing it or misplacing it, then I'll just have to go online, which will be a little bit of a bummer. But if you need to change the modes often, you don't want to keep the manual around, GameSir does have an app where you can make some tweaks to the controller as well. And here, let's take a quick look at that app. So of course, we have some status updates on the controller here. Firmware upgrade, if there's one available, you can push that. Controller testing, if you want to just make sure all the buttons and everything's working. And then if we go back, also have button settings. So this is where you can quickly switch between Switch layout or Xbox layout, which I do think is kind of funny that they call it Xbox layout when, it doesn't really work on an Xbox, but I guess it works on Windows, so that works. Of course, we have joystick settings. Here you can change your dead zones and also just, play around with it and make sure that everything is actually getting picked up when you move it. And then we'll go to trigger settings, and this is one I did have to adjust. So by default, the dead zone on the left trigger was at 5, and as you can see, it's kind of picking up here a little bit of movement. So I ended up moving that to 10, and that seems to work better. I think I was getting some kind of issues when playing Asphalt where, you know, it felt like I was pushing the trigger without actually pushing it, and I believe that was what was doing it. Moving down, you also have the hair trigger modes if you want to enable those. And then lastly on here, we have the motion sensor settings. You can turn on the gyroscope and make some adjustments to that if you would like. Quite a few different adjustments in there you can make. So that's just a quick look at the app and what you can do when this is connected to a smart device. So at just $50, the X5s really does seem like a good option for the casual player, especially if you have kids and play on multiple platforms. I love that I can use it on my phone, and then my kids enjoy using it during the day on the Switch because it fits their hands better than a larger Xbox shape. But this still feels much better than the stock Joy-Cons on their Switch. So if you find yourself gaming on a mobile device often and want to up your game, for just $50, I do think that the X5s is a great option. Check out the links down in the description if you want to pick one up for yourself. And thanks for watching 9 to 5 Mac. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I'm Jordan with 9 to 5 Mac.